August twilight cast long skeletal shadows across the peeling paint of our new fixer-upper in rural Vermont. Dust motes danced in the golden light that streamed through the grime-coated windows. The air, thick with the scent of neglect and damp earth, hung heavy in my lungs. "This place is a horror show," I muttered to myself, scraping at a particularly stubborn patch of floral wallpaper in the soon-to-be master bedroom. My boyfriend Ben and I, had bought this Victorian monstrosity on a whim, lured by the unbelievably low price tag and the intoxicating charm of a bygone era. Ben, a carpenter by trade, was ecstatic about the new construction he'd planned, converting the cramped kitchen into our master suite and installing a modern, open-plan living space downstairs. Me? I was relegated to the unglamorous task of stripping decades of wallpaper from every nook and cranny. It wasn't the most glamorous job, but it had an oddly therapeutic quality. The paper peeled away in satisfyingly long strips, like shedding dead skin after a sunburn. I turned it into a little game, a competition to see how long a piece I could remove before it ripped. It was mindless, repetitive work, perfect for letting my mind wander as I scraped and peeled. The first time I noticed anything strange was in the guest room. Tucked away beneath a corner of the rosebud-patterned wallpaper was a small inscription scrawled in faded pencil. Eleanor Walsh, 1897. Curiosity gnawed at me. Who was Eleanor Walsh, and why was her name written on the wall? That night, after Ben had gone to sleep, the inscription wouldn't leave my mind. Driven by a strange compulsion, I Googled Eleanor Walsh, Vermont, 1897. The results chilled me to the bone. Eleanor Walsh, a young woman who had vanished without a trace from a small Vermont town in 1897. The exact date scrawled beneath the wallpaper. Suddenly, the old house felt less charming and a whole lot creepier. Was it just a coincidence? Or was there something more sinister at play? The next morning, armed with a magnifying glass and a growing sense of dread, I meticulously inspected every room for hidden messages. My heart pounded in my chest as I found them. Names and dates tucked beneath layers of floral patterns, paisley prints, and even a faded map of the United States. With trembling hands, I compiled a list. Sarah Thompson, 1882, William Carter, 1904, Emily Davies, 1912, John Lewis, 1921. Every single name matched a missing persons case from Vermont's historical records, the dates precisely aligning with those inscribed beneath the wallpaper. Panic clawed at my throat. This wasn't wallpaper removal. This was something far more sinister. My breath hitched as I heard the creak of the stairs. Ben, his face smudged with sawdust from the renovation downstairs, came into the room. "Hey there, demolition crew," he said with a grin, holding out a steaming mug. "Ready to tackle another layer of history?" I forced a smile, swallowing the fear that threatened to choke me. "Actually," I managed, holding out the list, "I think we might have a bigger problem than peeling wallpaper." Ben's smile faltered as he scanned the list. His eyes widened in disbelief. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," I confessed, a tear welling in my eye. "But I think this house has a story to tell, and I'm scared to death to hear it." Without another word, I led him to the guest room, pointing to the inscription beneath the floral wallpaper. Ben knelt down, tracing the inscription with a calloused finger. His jaw tightened. "We need to call the police," he said, his voice grim. The phone call to the police station felt surreal. An officer with a skeptical look arrived. We showed him the inscription, then the list of names and dates. His expression changed from skepticism to a cold, hard curiosity. He called for the crime scene team. As the officers in their white jumpsuits swarmed the house, I huddled with Ben, our hands clasped tightly. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. One of the technicians, a woman with a grim expression, emerged from the guest room. "Yup," she said, her voice flat. "It's human. Asterisk, human?" My blood ran cold. Human? What did she mean, human? My mind raced, conjuring up horrifying images. Was there a body buried beneath the wallpaper? Or something worse? The technician, noticing my pale face, softened her tone. "Don't worry, ma'am," she said. "We'll handle this. But there's something else." She hesitated, then gestured towards a trash bag overflowing with the remnants of the wallpaper I'd removed. Where did this material come from? Shame washed over me. The walls, I stammered. The entire house was covered in it. The technician exchanged a worried glance with her partner. "Ma'am," she said, her voice grave, "that wasn't wallpaper you were removing." Her words hung heavy in the air. The room seemed to shrink, the air growing thick with dread. What was it?" Ben asked, his voice hoarse. The woman's answer was barely a whisper. "Skin." The revelation slammed into me like a physical blow. I felt faint, the room tilting around me. Skin? The house was literally layered with the skins of the missing people listed on my crumpled paper. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I stumbled back, gasping for air. Ben caught me, his arm a solid anchor in the storm of fear and revulsion churning inside me. The technicians, their faces grim, began meticulously sifting through the bag of skin. The sound of their latex gloves crackling as they moved the macabre material added a layer of sickening finality to the scene. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Police swarmed the house, taking photographs and measurements. A forensics team arrived, their faces hidden behind surgical masks, their voices hushed as they spoke in technical jargon. Ben and I were relegated to the living room, two stunned figures caught in the crossfire of a nightmare come true. As the day wore on and the initial shock started to recede, a new terror took hold. If these were the skins of missing people, Eleanor Walsh, Sarah Thompson, all the others, then what had become of their bodies? Buried beneath the floorboards? Hidden within the walls themselves? The house, once a charming relic of a bygone era, now felt like a tomb, a grotesque monument to a chilling secret. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The house was cordoned off as a crime scene. Reporters camped outside, their cameras flashing like hungry eyes. Our idyllic dream renovation had become a national nightmare. The investigation moved slowly, agonizingly so. Days turned into weeks, then months. The forensics team confirmed that the skin samples were indeed human, but they were weathered and fragmented, making identification nearly impossible. The only solace was the confirmation that the DNA matched the missing persons from my list. But the mystery of what happened to the bodies remained. Days stretched into weeks, then months. The police offered little in the way of explanations, their frustration mirroring our own. The house remained sealed, a silent sentinel holding its secrets tight. One evening, while Ben was out getting groceries, a lone detective, a man named Miller, paid us a visit. Weary and disheveled, he sank into the worn armchair in our temporary apartment. "This case is unlike anything I've ever seen," he confessed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "The lack of bodies. It's baffling. There's no sign of a struggle, no murder weapon. It's almost as if they..." He trailed off, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Evaporated." His words sent shivers down my spine. "Evaporated?" I echoed, my voice barely above a squeak. Miller nodded grimly. "It's a theory, but there's something else," he said, his gaze locking with mine. "We found a hidden compartment behind a wall in the basement. Inside there were journals." A flicker of hope sparked within me. Journals? Perhaps they held answers, a horrifying explanation for the missing bodies and the house's macabre secret. "The journals are written in a coded language," Miller continued, his voice low. "We're working on deciphering it, but it's slow going." He hesitated again, his face etched with concern. "There's something else mentioned in the fragments we've translated so far. Something about a ritual." He left the sentence unfinished, the implication hanging heavy in the air. A ritual. What kind? The word ritual echoed in my mind, resonating with a primal fear. I spent the restless night tossing and turning, haunted by images from the house. The peeling skin wallpaper, the oppressive silence, the oppressive feeling of being watched. The next day, Detective Miller returned, his face grimmer than before. "We've made some progress with the journals," he said, a tremor in his voice. "They detail a dark ceremony, a summoning ritual performed by the original owner of the house, a man named Silas Blackwood. Blackwood, according to the deciphered fragments, believed in a gateway, a way to transfer a person's consciousness into another realm, a process that required the preparation of a special canvas, human skin. A cold dread washed over me. The house wasn't just a tomb, it was an instrument of a monstrous ritual. Tears welled in my eyes as I imagined the terror of the victims, their essence trapped in some otherworldly dimension while their bodies simply vanished. We believe Blackwood performed the ritual on the missing people, Miller continued, but the journals are unclear on whether it was successful or... He trailed off, his voice laced with dread. The unspoken possibility hung heavy in the air, trapped in an unimaginable hell, or worse, ceasing to exist at all. Days turned into weeks, then months. The investigation stalled. The journals remained a frustrating puzzle, offering tantalizing glimpses of the dark ritual, but no clear answers. The house, a constant reminder of the horror it held, remained sealed. One blustery autumn afternoon, Ben and I received a call from Detective Miller. His voice was urgent. "We think we've made a breakthrough," he said. "The journals mention a specific day for the ritual, and it's today." A sickening dread filled me. Today? Did that mean the ritual was being performed again? Or perhaps its effects were finally manifesting? Miller urged us to stay put, promising to keep us updated. But waiting was an unbearable torture. As night fell, an unsettling quiet descended upon the city. The power flickered, then died completely, plunging us into darkness. The silence on the phone line added to the growing sense of dread. Then a sound tore through the silence, a blood-curdling scream, raw and primal, echoing from the direction of the sealed house. My heart hammered against my ribs. There was something monstrous happening within those walls, something terrifyingly connected to the ritual. Without thinking, I grabbed Ben's hand and raced outside, heedless of the blackout. We were halfway there when a blinding flash of light filled the night sky, followed by a deafening boom. The ground trembled beneath our feet. When the light subsided, we stumbled towards the house, a sickening foreboding gnawing at our souls. The house was a ruin. A gaping hole had been ripped into the roof, the rest of the structure warped and smoking. Sirens wailed in the distance, but for a moment there was only an unnerving silence. Then, a figure emerged from the wreckage, its form distorted, its skin a patchwork of swirling colors. It turned its head towards us, and for a terrifying second, I saw a flicker of recognition in its inhuman eyes. The eyes of Eleanor Walsh, Sarah Thompson, all the others trapped in a horrifying purgatory. The figure let out a guttural shriek and vanished into the night. The police arrived, cordoning off the scene, their faces illuminated by flashing emergency lights. But the true horror, the monstrous entity born from Blackwood's ritual, had escaped. We never rebuilt the house. The land remained a vacant lot, a chilling reminder of the unspeakable evil that had taken root there. As for the creature that escaped, it became a local legend, a whispered fear lurking in the shadows. Some nights I swear I can hear its inhuman screams carried on the wind, a constant reminder of the darkness that lingers even when the house is gone.